My dad kicked me off the 26K Dubai trip I paid for just to give my spot to my brother's clingy fiancée. He said she needed it more. Big mistake. I made sure they'd regret what came next. Oh, you are not going to believe what happened. I'm talking about a betrayal so deep, so infuriating, that it still makes my blood boil when I think about it. My own father kicked me off the $26,000 luxury Dubai trip I paid for, all to give my spot to my brother's entitled fiancée. And the worst part? He told me she deserved it more. Let me tell you, that was the biggest mistake of his life, because I made sure they'd never, ever forget it. My name is Alexandra, and I'm 32 years old. For as long as I can remember, I've prided myself on being independent, hardworking, and incredibly devoted to my family. Last year, I poured my heart, soul, and nearly $26,000 of my own hard-earned money into planning the most incredible Dubai vacation for my parents and my brother. Never in a million years did I imagine that my father would call me one day to tell me I was no longer welcome on the trip I had paid for. Also, my brother Michael's fiancée, Natalie, could go instead. To really understand why this cut so deep, you need to know a little about my family and how things always worked between us. I work as a senior financial manager at a prestigious investment firm in Chicago. After a decade of grinding, climbing that corporate ladder, I finally hit a point where I could actually enjoy some financial stability, maybe even a little luxury. I bought my own home, paid off all my student loans, and I've been meticulously building my investment portfolio. Everything I have, I built myself, and I'm damn proud of it. Then there's my dad, John. He's 62, a retired military officer. He basically runs our household like he ran his platoon. Strict rules, sky-high expectations. Growing up, his approval was everything to me, something I desperately craved, but rarely, if ever, received. My mom, Diane, is 60, and she's always been the peacekeeper. She rarely contradicts my father. She just quietly goes along with whatever he decides, even when you can tell she secretly disagrees. Their marriage was always super traditional. Dad made the calls, mom supported them. And then there's my older brother, Michael. He's 35, and honestly, he's never really found his footing in life. He dropped out of college twice, bounced between various sales jobs, never staying anywhere longer than a year or two. But despite all that, my parents, especially my dad, always treated him like the golden child. When we were kids, Michael could do no wrong. If he barely scraped by with a C in school, my dad would praise him for passing. If I got straight A's, except for one B, my dad would grill me. Why couldn't you get a perfect report card, Alexandra? This pattern just kept going into adulthood. When Michael needed money to pay off credit card debt after some spontaneous trip to Vegas with his buddies, my parents dipped into their retirement savings to bail him out. But when I needed a small loan for an unexpected medical bill during my first year out of college, my father lectured me about financial responsibility and told me to figure it out on my own. So I did. I picked up extra shifts at the coffee shop, ate ramen noodles for a month. I made it work. The difference in how we were treated? It was stark. It was glaringly obvious. But I just learned to accept it. I focused on building my own life, becoming financially independent as fast as humanly possible. I put myself through college and grad school, taking out loans, working part-time jobs. Meanwhile, my parents paid for Michael's multiple attempts at higher education, none of which he ever finished. Despite all this, despite the uneven treatment, I've always tried to stay close to my family. I visit my parents at least twice a month for Sunday dinners. I call them regularly. I really tried to be the daughter they could be proud of, even if they rarely said it directly. As my career took off and my finances improved, my parents subtly started seeing me as a resource. Like when their roof needed replacing a couple of years ago, my dad called to ask if I could help out. I ended up contributing $8,000 toward the repairs. Last year, when Michael was between jobs, my mom hinted he was struggling to make rent. I sent him $2,000. He never even acknowledged it, never said thank you. It was around that time that Michael started dating Natalie. She's 28, works part-time at some boutique downtown, though from what Michael said, she calls in sick more often than she actually shows up. From the moment I met her, something just felt off. She was polite, sure, but there was this calculating look behind her smile that just made me uneasy. Natalie, it turned out, was very quick to identify who held the purse strings in our family. Within weeks of meeting my parents, she was calling them Mom and Dad. She spent more time at their house than her own apartment. She'd compliment my mom's cooking with these over-the-top praises, and she'd listen to my dad's military stories with rapt attention, asking questions that perfectly stroked his ego. With me, though, it was totally different. After she found out what I did for a living, her eyes lit up with this look I'd seen way too many times before. It's that same look people get when they realize you have access to money, and they immediately start mentally calculating what they might get from you. She started asking really pointed questions about my salary, my house, my vacation habits. When I stayed vague, her interest in building any kind of real relationship with me noticeably cooled. What truly bothered me was how quickly she managed to insert herself into every single family gathering. If I planned to take my parents out to dinner, somehow Michael and Natalie would magically end up joining. If I wanted one-on-one time with my mom, Natalie would conveniently drop by with some small gift or a question that needed immediate attention. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was just super eager to be part of a family. Maybe her attachment to my parents came from a place of genuine affection. But the more time passed, the more I noticed a very clear pattern. Natalie was only interested in the material benefits of being connected to us. She'd comment on my mother's jewelry, hinting at how she'd always wanted similar pieces. She'd admire my father's car and mention that Michael had promised to buy her one just like it someday, all while looking pointedly at my dad. Michael, bless his heart, seemed completely oblivious to her tactics. He was clearly infatuated, hanging on her every word, bending over backward to please her. I noticed he'd started buying her really expensive gifts despite his perpetually precarious financial situation. When I gently asked where the money was coming from, he vaguely mumbled something about side gigs and changed the subject fast. I suspected my parents were funding his newfound generosity, but I chose not to press it. Despite my reservations about Natalie, I still loved my brother. I wanted to maintain a good relationship with him. And despite the uneven treatment from my parents all those years, I still deeply cared for them. I wanted to do something truly special to show my appreciation. That's when the idea for the Dubai trip really took shape in my mind. It came to me during a quiet moment at work. I was reviewing some travel expense reports for our executives when I suddenly remembered my parents' 40th wedding anniversary was coming up. 40 years of marriage. That's an incredible milestone that deserved to be celebrated in a spectacular way, complicated family dynamics or not. My parents had never traveled outside the United States. My dad always said international travel was too expensive, too complicated. My mom occasionally mentioned wanting to see the world, but she never pushed the issue. I wanted to give them an experience they would never, ever forget. Something completely different from their normal lives in suburban Illinois. Dubai seemed perfect. It offered luxury, cultural experiences, mind-blowing architectural marvels, and desert adventures all in one place. I just knew the photos of them in front of the Burj Khalifa, or riding camels in the desert, would be something they'd treasure forever. And the weather would be ideal during their anniversary month. Not too hot, but warm enough to enjoy the beautiful beaches. I started researching immediately, spending my lunch breaks and evenings mapping out the perfect itinerary. I wanted everything to be first class, a true once-in-a-lifetime experience. I looked into 5-star hotels, private desert safaris, exclusive dining, VIP access to the top attractions. I even decided to include my brother, Michael, in the trip. Despite our differences, he was their son too, and I knew they'd want him there to celebrate this milestone. The total cost was staggering, nearly $26,000 for the 4 of us. It would take almost all of my annual bonus and a significant chunk of my savings, but I decided it was absolutely worth it. I set up a separate savings account, putting money aside each month. I took on additional projects at work that offered performance bonuses. I cut back on my own expenses, making coffee at home instead of Starbucks, bringing lunch to work, even postponing the kitchen renovation I'd been planning for my house. Over the course of 18 methodical months, I saved and planned. I worked with a high-end travel agency to book first-class Emirates flights. I reserved rooms at the Burj Al Arab, one of the most luxurious hotels in the world. I arranged a private desert dinner experience complete with traditional entertainment, a guided tour of the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi, a private yacht cruise around the Palm Jumeirah, and VIP access to the observation deck of the Burj Khalifa. I even scheduled a private shopping experience at the Dubai Mall with a personal stylist. Each booking, each payment, brought me so much joy. I pictured my mother's face as she stood at the top of the tallest building in the world. I imagined my father, who'd been deployed in the Middle East during his military service, but never had the opportunity to truly appreciate the culture, enjoying the traditional food and entertainment. I even looked forward to sharing these experiences with Michael, hoping that perhaps this shared adventure might finally bridge some of the distance between us. When everything was finally arranged, I presented the trip to my family during a Sunday dinner. I created elaborate invitation cards with gold embossing and placed them next to their dessert plates. My mother opened hers first, her hands trembling as she read the details. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes, speechless. "Alexandra," she finally managed to ask, her voice barely a whisper. Is this real?" I nodded, smiling at her reaction. "Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. I wanted to do something truly special for you both." My father studied his invitation, a furrowed brow, as if searching for the catch. "This must have cost a fortune," he said. "Don't worry about that," I assured him. "It's my gift to you. You both deserve it." Michael examined his invitation with wide eyes. "First-class flights? The Burj Al Arab? Are you serious, Alex?" "Completely serious," I confirmed. "We leave in 6 months, the week of Mom and Dad's anniversary. I've already cleared the time off with work and even spoken to your boss too, Michael. Everything is arranged." My mother got up from her chair and came around the table to hug me tightly. "Thank you, sweetheart. This is the most wonderful gift anyone has ever given us." Even my father seemed genuinely moved, though he expressed it in his typical reserved manner. "This is very generous of you, Alexandra. Thank you." It was one of those rare moments where I felt truly appreciated by my family, especially my father. The look of genuine gratitude in his eyes made all the sacrifices, all the ramen noodles, completely worth it. But that beautiful moment was rudely interrupted when the doorbell rang. My mother went to answer it and returned with Michael's girlfriend, Natalie, in tow. She had apparently decided to surprise Michael by showing up for dessert, though I strongly suspected he'd texted her about the dinner earlier. I hope you don't mind me crashing your family dinner, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Michael mentioned your mom made her famous apple pie, and I just couldn't resist. As she took a seat next to Michael, she noticed the invitation cards and her eyebrows shot up. What's this? Are we celebrating something? Michael quickly explained about the Dubai trip, his voice practically brimming with excitement as he detailed all the luxurious elements I'd planned. Natalie's expression transformed as he spoke, her eyes widening, a hungry smile spreading across her face. Dubai? Oh my God, that sounds amazing, she exclaimed, looking at the invitation in Michael's hand with naked envy. I've always wanted to go there. All those Instagram influencers are always posting from Dubai. The shopping there is supposed to be incredible. I noticed she used the word Instagram with particular emphasis, and I could already picture her plotting all the social media content she would create if she were on such a trip. The thought made me uncomfortable, but I reminded myself that she wasn't invited, so it wasn't an issue I needed to worry about. Throughout dessert, Natalie peppered me with questions about the trip. How long would we be staying? Which attractions would we visit? Would there be time for shopping? Had I arranged for any special experiences? With each answer I provided, her expression grew more intense, a mixture of longing and calculation that set off loud warning bells in my mind. As the evening wound down and I prepared to leave, Natalie gave me an uncomfortably tight hug. You are so generous to do this for your family, Alexandra, she said. Michael is so lucky to have such a caring sister. Something in her tone felt disingenuous, but I just smiled politely and thanked her. As I drove home that night, I couldn't shake a vague sense of unease. In retrospect, I should have paid more attention to that feeling. It was the first sign of the trouble to come. 2 months before our scheduled departure to Dubai, Michael called to share some news. He and Natalie had gotten engaged. He had proposed during a weekend trip to Lake Michigan, presenting her with a diamond ring that I later learned had been purchased with money borrowed from our parents. That's wonderful news, Michael, I said, genuinely trying to sound enthusiastic despite my growing concerns about their relationship. I'm happy for you both. Thanks, sis, he replied, sounding genuinely excited. We haven't set a date yet, but Natalie is already talking about venues and dresses. You know how women get about wedding planning. I let that comment slide and asked how our parents had reacted to the news. They're thrilled, he said. Mom cried and Dad actually hugged me. Can you believe it? They're having us over for dinner this Sunday to celebrate. You'll come, right? I agreed to attend, though I had mixed feelings about the engagement. On one hand, I wanted my brother to be happy. On the other, I had serious doubts about Natalie's motives, whether she truly cared for Michael or just saw him as a meal ticket with family connections she could exploit. When Sunday arrived, I drove to my parents' house with a nice bottle of champagne as an engagement gift. I'd debated what to buy, ultimately deciding that champagne was traditional and appropriate without being overly expensive or personal. I wasn't ready to invest emotionally or financially in a relationship I had so many doubts about. When I arrived, the house was already in full celebration mode. My mother had prepared an elaborate meal. My father had bought flowers for the table. Michael and Natalie were sitting in the living room, accepting congratulations like visiting royalty. Natalie was showing off her engagement ring to my mother, who was oohing and awing appropriately. Alexandra, Natalie exclaimed when she saw me, jumping up to embrace me. I'm so glad you could make it. Look at my ring. Isn't it gorgeous? Michael did so well. I admired the ring politely, noting that it was at least 2 carats, and likely well beyond what Michael could afford on his own. My suspicions about my parents' financial involvement were essentially confirmed when I noticed my mother wearing costume jewelry instead of her usual gold pieces. She had likely pawned some of her own jewelry to help Michael buy the ring. During dinner, the conversation inevitably turned to the upcoming Dubai trip, which was now just 8 weeks away. Natalie leaned forward eagerly as my mother discussed what clothes she planned to pack. I've been researching Dubai fashion, Natalie interjected. For the desert safari, you'll want to wear light layers because it gets cold at night, and for the Burj Al Arab, we should definitely dress up. I was thinking of wearing my new red dress, the one with the gold accents. Her casual use of "we" set off immediate alarm bells. I glanced at Michael, who was studiously avoiding eye contact with me. My father was nodding along as Natalie spoke, seemingly unbothered by her presumption. I cleared my throat. Natalie, I'm not sure if Michael explained, but the trip is for our parents' anniversary. I've made reservations for 4 people. My parents, Michael, and myself. A heavy silence fell over the table. Natalie's smile froze on her face, though her eyes narrowed ever so slightly. My father set down his fork with a deliberate motion that I recognized from childhood as a warning sign. Alexandra, he said slowly, his voice calm but firm. Now that Michael and Natalie are engaged, don't you think it would be appropriate to include her in our family celebration? My stomach tightened. Dad, I'd love to include Natalie, but the trip has been planned and paid for with 4 people in mind. All the reservations, the hotel rooms, the private tours, everything is arranged for 4. Adding a 5th person at this stage would be complicated and incredibly expensive. Surely you could make some adjustments, my father pressed. Natalie is going to be part of our family now. My mother, who had been silent until now tentatively, spoke up. The trip is Alexandra's gift to us, John. She's put a lot of thought and money into planning it. I shot her a grateful look, but my father waved away her comment. Alexandra is doing very well in her career. I'm sure the additional cost would not be a burden for her. Michael finally looked up from his plate. Natalie has never been out of the country before. She doesn't even have a passport yet, but we're expediting it. This would be such an amazing first international experience for her. Natalie reached over and squeezed my father's hand. I would never want to impose, John. It's just that Michael has told me so much about this trip. And it sounds like such a special family time. I would love to be included, but I completely understand if it's not possible. Her tone was conciliatory, but her expression conveyed a different message entirely. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. The issue is not just the additional cost, though that's certainly a factor. The Burj Al Arab suites I reserved are configured for specific numbers of guests. The desert dinner experience is a private booking for 4. The first-class airfare alone for another person would be over $5,000 at this point. And that's if we can even get a seat on the same flights. So you're saying no? My father's tone had an edge to it that I recognized all too well. I'm saying it would be very difficult to change everything at this point, I clarified. Maybe Natalie and Michael can plan their own trip to Dubai after the wedding. I'd be happy to share my research and recommendations. That's very generous of you, Alexandra, Natalie said with a tight smile. But it wouldn't be the same as experiencing it together as a family, especially for such a special occasion. My father nodded in agreement. Family should be together for important celebrations. The irony of my father suddenly emphasizing family togetherness when it conveniently benefited Natalie was not lost on me. But I bit my tongue. This was supposed to be a happy occasion, celebrating my brother's engagement, not the time for a full-blown confrontation about decades of favoritism. Let me look into the options, I conceded, though I had no intention of spending thousands more to include someone who I was increasingly certain was just using my brother and my parents for her own gain. The rest of dinner proceeded with an undercurrent of tension. When it was time to leave, my father walked me to the door, his expression serious. Alexandra, I hope you will make the right decision about this trip, he said, his tone making it abundantly clear what he considered the right decision to be. I'll do my best, Dad, I replied noncommittally. As I drove home, a heavy sense of dread settled over me. I had a feeling this issue was far from resolved, and I was right. It was only the beginning of a situation that would ultimately test the very bounds of my relationship with my entire family. A month before our scheduled departure to Dubai, my father called and asked me to come over to the house. We need to talk about the trip, he said, his tone uncharacteristically careful. Can you come by around 6 tonight? I agreed, though I had a terrible sinking feeling about what this conversation would entail. I hadn't heard much about the trip in recent weeks, which was suspicious given how excited everyone had been initially. My attempts to confirm details with my parents had been met with vague responses and quick subject changes. When I arrived at my parents' house, that evening I immediately sensed something was wrong. My mother opened the door but could barely meet my eyes as she welcomed me in. In the living room, my father sat in his favorite armchair, his posture rigid. Michael was on the couch, and beside him, looking surprisingly comfortable for someone who should have been a guest in the situation, sat Natalie. Alexandra, have a seat, my father said, gesturing to the lone chair across from him, positioned in a way that made me feel like I was about to face a firing squad. I sat down, my heart already racing. What is going on? I asked, my voice tight. My father cleared his throat. We have been doing some thinking about the Dubai trip, and we have made a decision. The use of we did not escape my notice. This was supposedly my gift to them. Yet they were making decisions without me. Your mother and I believe that since Natalie is going to be joining our family, this anniversary trip would be a perfect opportunity for us all to bond and create memories together. I nodded slowly, having fully expected this. As I mentioned before, adding another person to the reservations would be complicated, but not impossible. If you all feel strongly about it, I can look into the additional costs and see what changes need to be made. That's not quite what we had in mind, my father continued, looking uncomfortable for the first time. Given the limitations you mentioned about the reservations being for 4 people, we think the most sensible solution is for Natalie to take your place on the trip. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at my father, certain I had misheard him. Excuse me? It makes the most sense, he pressed on, his voice taking on that authoritative tone he used when he expected no argument. You have traveled internationally before. Natalie never has. This would be a new experience for her, whereas for you, it would just be another trip. I felt as though all the air had been sucked from the room. My mother was staring at her hands, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. Michael had the decency to look somewhat ashamed, though not enough to actually speak up on my behalf. Natalie sat with a slight, almost smug smile playing at her lips, her expression one of poorly concealed triumph. Dad, I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. I paid for this trip. I planned every single detail. This was my gift to you and Mom for your anniversary. And we appreciate that, he replied quickly, dismissively. But gifts, once given, belong to the recipient. Your mother and I would like to share this experience with our son and his future wife. The casual cruelty of his statement left me absolutely breathless. I looked to my mother, desperate, hoping for support, but she remained silent, her eyes downcast. Natalie deserves to go more than you do, my father added, delivering the most painful blow yet. She is about to become part of this family. This trip would mean so much more to her than it would to you. I felt hot tears pricking at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I have been planning this for over a year and a half. I worked extra hours, gave up my own vacation plans, and spent nearly $26,000 to create this experience for our family. And we will pay you back for your portion, my father said dismissively, as if that addressed the core issue. Michael has calculated that your share would be around $6,000. We can write you a check right now. I laughed incredulously. $6,000, Dad? The first-class airfare alone is more than that per person, not to mention the hotel suites, the private tours, the special experiences I arranged. Michael finally spoke up. Alex, don't be selfish about this. Family helps family, you know? Natalie and I can't afford a trip like this on our own. You have a great job and can go to Dubai anytime you want. Selfish? I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. I spent my own money I worked hard for, to give our parents a special anniversary gift. How exactly does that make me selfish? It's selfish to deny Natalie this opportunity, just because you want to go. Michael shot back. You always have to be the center of attention. Don't you always have to be showing off how successful you are, how much money you make? His words were so hypocritical, so completely divorced from reality, that for a moment I couldn't even respond. I had spent years quietly supporting this family, receiving little recognition and even less gratitude. And now I was being accused of showing off? Michael, I have never— Alexandra! My father cut in, his tone making it clear he considered the matter settled. Our decision is final. Natalie will be going in your place. We can discuss the financial details later if you are unhappy with the amount we have offered. Natalie, who had been watching this exchange with barely concealed satisfaction, finally spoke. Alexandra, I want you to know how much this means to me. I never had the opportunity to travel growing up, and sharing this experience with Michael and my future in-laws is something I will cherish forever. I am so grateful to be included in such a special family moment. Her performance was flawless, her eyes wide with feigned sincerity. I could almost believe she meant it, if not for the smug smile she couldn't quite suppress. My mother finally looked up, her expression pained. Alexandra, It's fine, Mom, I interrupted, unable to bear hearing her make excuses for this blatant betrayal. I understand exactly what is happening here. I stood up, my legs feeling unsteady beneath me. I hope you all enjoy the trip. It's a gift, after all, and apparently gifts, once given, belong to the recipient. To do with as they please. Don't be dramatic, Alexandra, my father said with a frown. This is a practical solution to a simple problem. There was no problem until you created one, I replied, finding my voice again, strong and clear. The problem is that you have always treated Michael differently than me. The problem is that you see nothing wrong with taking something I worked hard for and giving it to someone else because you think they deserve it more. The problem is that I am supposedly part of this family too, but I am being pushed aside the moment someone new comes along. My father's expression hardened. That is enough. I will not be spoken to this way in my own home. Fine, I said, grabbing my purse. Then I will leave. As I headed for the door, Natalie called after me. Alexandra, please don't leave angry. We're going to be sisters soon. I'd hate for this to come between us. I turned back to look at her. At all of them. You know what, Natalie? We are not going to be sisters. You may marry my brother. You may charm my parents. But you and I will never be family. Not after this. I walked out, closing the EOEO hard sucker firmly behind me. In my car, I finally allowed the tears to fall. Great heaving sobs that shook my entire body. The betrayal cut deep, not just from my father, whose favoritism I had long ago accepted, but from my mother, who had always at least pretended to love us equally. Even from Michael, who despite our differences was still my brother, the person who had shared my childhood, and who should have understood what this meant to me. As I drove home, my sadness began to give way to a simmering, righteous anger. I had spent thousands of dollars, countless hours planning, and made numerous personal sacrifices to create this special experience. And with a single brutal conversation, it had been ripped from me and handed to someone who had done absolutely nothing to earn it. Someone who was clearly using my family for her own benefit. By the time I reached my house, a steely resolve had hardened within me. I may have been removed from the trip, but I still had control over the reservations. And if my family thought they could treat me this way without consequences, they were about to learn a very expensive lesson. I spent that night crying until I had no tears left. The betrayal felt like a physical wound, a hollow ache in my chest that hurt with every breath. Around midnight, I called my best friend Sarah, who answered despite the late hour. They did what? She exclaimed after I explained what had happened. Your own father kicked you off a trip that you paid for, and they expect you to just accept that? Apparently, I said, my voice hoarse from crying. My dad actually said Natalie deserves to go more than I do, after everything I've done for them over the years, after all the times I've helped them financially. This is how they treat me. Alex, I love you, but you've got to stop letting your family walk all over you, Sarah said firmly. They've been taking advantage of your generosity for years, and now they've crossed a line that should never be crossed. What am I supposed to do? I asked, feeling helpless. The trip is already paid for. If I make a fuss, I'll just be seen as the difficult one, as usual. Sarah was quiet for a moment, then said, "Don't let them get away with this. You planned this trip. You paid for it. The reservations are in your name, right?" "Yes," I confirmed. "Everything was booked through my travel agent under my name." "Then you still have control over those reservations." Sarah pointed out. "They can't just decide to remove you without your cooperation." A mischievous, satisfying thought began to form in my mind. "You're right," I whispered. "The bookings are all in my name. I'm the primary contact. For everything." "Exactly," Sarah said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I'm not saying you should cancel everything because that might be too harsh, but maybe there are some adjustments that could be made." We talked for another hour, exploring various options. By the time we hung up, my tears had dried, and a deliciously wicked plan was taking shape. I wouldn't cancel the trip entirely. That would be too vindictive, even under these circumstances. But I would ensure that the luxury experience I had planned and paid for was significantly altered. The next morning, I called my travel agent, Melissa, who had helped me plan every single detail of the Dubai trip. I explained the situation, leaving out some of the more painful, personal details to maintain my professionalism. "I need to make some changes to the Dubai booking," I said once the pleasantries were out of the way. "Unfortunately, I won't be joining the trip, and we need to adjust the reservations accordingly." "I'm sorry to hear that, Alexandra," Melissa replied, sounding genuinely disappointed for me. "What kind of changes do you have in mind?" "First, I need to change the flight bookings. Instead of first class on Emirates, I would like to switch everyone to economy class." "That's quite a downgrade," Melissa noted. "Are you sure?" "Positive," I confirmed. "Also, I need to cancel the reservation at the Burj Al Arab. Instead, please book 2 standard rooms at—" I paused to reference the list of hotels I had researched the night before. "The City Season Hotel. It's in Dira, I believe." "That's on the other side of the city from all the attractions you had planned to visit," Melissa pointed out, a hint of caution in her voice. "And it's a 3-star hotel, not the luxury experience you were aiming for." "That's fine," I assured her, my voice firm. "I also need to cancel all the private tours and experiences I had booked. The desert dinner, the yacht cruise, the VIP access at the Burj Khalifa. All of it." "Alexandra," Melissa said cautiously, "these changes will significantly alter the trip experience. Are you absolutely certain this is what you want to do?" "I am," I said, no hesitation. "My circumstances have changed, and these adjustments are necessary. Please also cancel the airport transfers and the personal shopping experience." Melissa sighed, but began making notes. "What about basic transportation around Dubai? Do you want me to arrange anything for them?" I considered this. I didn't want to strand my family completely in an unfamiliar city. That would be cruel, and potentially dangerous. "Please arrange for a basic tour package, something that includes transportation to the main attractions, but without any VIP elements or private guides." "I can do that," she confirmed. "Will you be rebooking your portion of the trip for a later date? The refund for the downgraded elements could be applied to a solo trip for you." This was something I had already considered, actually. "Yes," I said. "I've been thinking about visiting the Maldives. Could you see what kind of upgrade I could get for a 1-person trip with the difference from these changes?" "The Maldives is beautiful," Melissa said, her tone warming instantly. "I would be happy to put together some options for you. With the difference from downgrading the Dubai trip, you could have a very luxurious experience there." We spent the next hour going through all the details, canceling, rebooking, reallocating funds. When we were finished, the Dubai trip had been transformed from a first-class luxury experience into a basic international vacation. Meanwhile, I had secured myself a week at an overwater bungalow in the Maldives, with private butler service, daily spa treatments, and gourmet dining included. "All the changes have been processed," Melissa confirmed. "The new itineraries will be emailed to you shortly. Do you want me to send the updated Dubai itinerary to your family members directly?" "No," I decided after a moment of delicious consideration. "I'll handle communicating the changes to them." But I had no intention of doing so. Let them discover the truth when they arrived at the airport, expecting first-class treatment and champagne, only to be directed to the economy check-in desk. Let them realize what had happened when they arrived in Dubai and were taken to a basic hotel miles from the attractions instead of one of the most luxurious hotels in the world. A part of me felt a flicker of guilt about the deception, particularly where my mother was concerned. But then I remembered her silence. As my father had informed me I was being removed from the trip I had paid for. Her unwillingness to stand up for me, even in that extreme situation. The guilt faded, replaced by a deep sense of justice. I wasn't canceling their trip. They would still get to go to Dubai, still get to see the sights and experience a new country together. They just wouldn't be doing it in the lavish style I had originally planned. The difference would go toward my own well-deserved vacation, a small compensation for the hurt they had caused me. As I hung up with Melissa, I felt a massive weight lift from my shoulders. For perhaps the first time in my life, I had truly stood up for myself against my family's unfair treatment. It wasn't a perfect solution, and I knew there would be fallout when they discovered what I had done. But at that moment, I couldn't bring myself to care. They had made their choice, and now I had made mine. The day of the Dubai trip finally arrived. I hadn't spoken to any of my family members since that fateful evening when I was so cruelly removed. My father had called once, leaving a message about finalizing the financial arrangements for my portion of the trip cost. But I hadn't returned his call. My mother had texted a few times, bland messages that carefully avoided mentioning the elephant in the room. Michael hadn't reached out at all. I knew exactly when their flight was scheduled to depart, and I imagined them arriving at the airport, dressed in their best clothes, expecting to be ushered into the first-class lounge for champagne and gourmet snacks before boarding. Instead, they would be directed to the economy check-in line, standing with the masses, their boarding passes showing seats at the back of the plane, rather than the spacious first-class pods I had originally booked. I was sitting at my desk at work, pretending to focus on a spreadsheet while actually watching the clock, when my phone rang. It was my father. I contemplated not answering, but decided it was time to face the music. "Hello, Dad," I said, keeping my voice neutral, almost bored. "Alexandra, what the hell is going on?" he demanded, his voice tight with barely suppressed anger. "We are at the airport and they are telling us we have economy tickets, not first class. There must be some mistake." "No mistake," I replied calmly. "I made some adjustments to the reservations." There was a stunned silence. Then my father exploded. "You did what? How dare you change the arrangements without telling us? We look like fools standing here. The check-in agent is looking at us like we're trying to scam our way into first class." "I'm sorry you're embarrassed," I said, not feeling sorry at all. "But as you said, Dad, gifts once given belong to the recipient. You decided to change who was going on this trip, and I decided to change what kind of trip it would be. This is completely unacceptable," he sputtered, practically choking on his words. "We had an agreement." "Did we?" I shot back. "I don't recall agreeing to be kicked off my own trip. I don't recall agreeing to have my gift redistributed to someone who, until recently, was a stranger to our family." "Is this about money?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Because if it is, we can discuss increasing the amount we pay you back." "It's not about money, Dad," I said, my voice gaining strength. "It's about respect. It's about appreciation for what I tried to do for our family. It's about decades of being treated as less important than Michael, culminating in being told that his girlfriend deserves my place on a trip I paid for, more than I do." I could hear my mother in the background, her muffled voice asking what was happening. I heard my father's muffled explanation, then her sharp gasp of surprise. "Alexandra." My mother's voice came through the phone, apparently having taken it from my father. "Sweetheart, please, this is our anniversary trip. Can't we work this out?" "I'm sorry, Mom," I said, genuinely regretful that she was caught in the middle of this. "But the decision has been made, just like the decision to remove me from the trip was made. You are still going to Dubai. You will still see all the sights. It just won't be the luxury experience I had originally planned." "But," she began, only to be cut off as my father apparently snatched the phone back. "You listen to me," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You fix this right now, or there will be serious consequences for your relationship with this family." "I think those consequences already happened, Dad, when you decided Natalie was more deserving of my place than I was," I countered, a triumphant smirk on my face. "Enjoy economy class. I hear the middle seats are particularly comfortable." I hung up. My heart was racing, but a fierce sense of satisfaction flowed through me. I had expected to feel guilty, but instead, I felt utterly empowered. For once, I had refused to be the family doormat. Over the next few days, the messages rolled in as each new adjustment was discovered. Michael texted furiously when they arrived, at the hotel in Dera, far from the glamorous downtown Dubai area where they had expected to stay. "What the hell, Alex? This hotel is barely 3 stars and it's in the middle of nowhere. The rooms are tiny and there's no view. How could you do this to us?" I didn't respond. My mother called when they discovered all the special experiences had been canceled. Her voice was tearful as she left a message. "Alexandra, I understand you are hurt, but this was supposed to be our anniversary celebration. The desert dinner I was so looking forward to is canceled. The private yacht cruise is gone. Everything special has been removed. Please call me back. We need to talk about this." I did not return her call. Natalie, predictably, took to social media to express her displeasure, though she was careful not to mention me directly. Her Instagram posts, which had started out enthusiastic about her dream trip to Dubai, quickly devolved into thinly veiled complaints. "Not everything is as glamorous as it seems on social media," she wrote beneath a photo of their basic hotel room. "But we're making the best of it. Expectation vs reality, travel fails." Another post showed them in the regular observation deck line at the Burj Khalifa, which I knew would mean hours of waiting instead of the immediate access the VIP tickets would have provided. 3-hour wait just to get to the elevator. Someone didn't plan this very well. Harsh, exhausted, not worth it. The most satisfying message came 4 days into their trip. A voicemail from my father that represented a significant shift in tone from his previous anger. "Alexandra," he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I think I owe you an apology. We didn't realize the extent of what you had planned for this trip. The travel agency showed us the original itinerary when we tried to rebook some of the experiences. I had no idea you had invested so much into making this special." He paused, and I could hear him clearing his throat. "What we did was wrong. I see that now. Taking your place on this trip was unfair, especially after all you did to plan it. I should have considered your feelings more carefully. I hope when we return we can sit down and talk about this. I want to make things right. I saved that message but still did not call back. I wanted them to sit with their actions for longer. The most unexpected development came in the form of a private message from my mother on the 5th day of their trip. It was longer and more heartfelt than anything she had communicated to me in years. Alexandra, I need to tell you how sorry I am. Not just for this trip situation, but for years of standing by while your father favored Michael. I have always been too afraid to stand up to him, too worried about rocking the boat. But seeing how hurt you are, how justifiably angry, has made me realize that my silence has been a form of betrayal too. I want you to know that Michael and Natalie have been fighting constantly on this trip. The stress of the downgraded accommodations, the long waits for attractions, the lack of special treatment Natalie expected, has revealed cracks in their relationship that I suspect were always there. Your father is beginning to see Natalie's true colors as well. She has been complaining nonstop and blaming everyone else for the disappointments. I know this does not excuse what we did to you, but I thought you should know that your absence has been keenly felt. This trip was your vision, your gift, and without you here to share it, it feels hollow. When we return, I hope we can begin to repair our relationship. I have a lot of making up to do, and a lot of changes to make in how I stand up for you in the future. That message brought tears to my eyes, not of sadness, but of validation. My mother had finally seen what I had been experiencing for years. It was a small step, but a significant one. The final update came from Michael, of all people, on the last day of their trip. His message was brief, but spoke volumes. You were right about Natalie. I'm sorry. From social media, I pieced together that Natalie had thrown a full-blown tantrum when Michael refused to buy her an expensive handbag at the Dubai Mall, accusing him of being cheap and ruining her once-in-a-lifetime trip. Apparently, the argument had escalated to the point where my parents had to intervene, and in the process, some ugly truths about Natalie's motivations for being with Michael had come to light. While they were in Dubai having their considerably less luxurious vacation, I was enjoying my own solitude in the Maldives. My overwater bungalow was everything I had dreamed of, crystal clear waters beneath my private deck and spectacular sunsets viewed from my personal infinity pool. The staff treated me like royalty, remembering my name and preferences from day one. Each morning, I awoke to breakfast delivered by boat to my villa. Each evening, I dined on fresh seafood under the stars. I posted exactly one photo on social media during my trip. A shot of my feet propped up on the deck railing, the turquoise water stretching to the horizon, with the simple caption, "Sometimes you have to choose yourself. Our self-care Hark Maldives." I knew my family would see it. I knew they would understand. And for once, I didn't care what they thought about my choices. When I returned from the Maldives, tanned, rested, and with a profound new sense of self-respect, I found several messages waiting for me. My family had been back from Dubai for a few days, and it seemed they were eager to talk. I took my time responding, allowing myself the space to process my feelings and decide how I wanted to move forward. Eventually, I agreed to meet my father for coffee at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between our homes. When I arrived, I was surprised to find him already there, looking uncharacteristically nervous. He stood when he saw me, an automatic military courtesy. That felt strangely formal given our relationship. "Alexandra," he said, pulling out my chair. "Thank you for meeting me." I nodded and sat down, waiting for him to speak. He had asked for this meeting. The burden of beginning was on him. "I owe you an apology," he said finally, his voice gruff with emotion. What we did with the Dubai trip, was wrong. I see that now." "Why did you do it?" I asked, the question that had been burning in me for weeks. "Why did you think it was acceptable to take something I had worked so hard for and give it to someone else?" He sighed heavily. "I could give you excuses about wanting to welcome Natalie into the family, about thinking you would understand because you are always so capable and independent. But the truth is simpler and harder to admit. I have not been fair to you for a very long time." He looked down at his coffee cup, turning it slowly between his hands. "I have always expected more from you than from Michael. When you succeeded, I took it for granted. When you gave, I accepted without proper gratitude. I held you to a higher standard and then resented you for meeting it." His admission stunned me. I had always sensed this dynamic, but I never in a million years expected him to actually acknowledge it. "The Dubai trip," he continued, "was just the most egregious example of a pattern that has existed since you were children. I favored Michael because he struggled, because he needed more support. But in doing so, I failed to appreciate the daughter who never gave me cause for worry, who always exceeded expectations." Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them away. "Do you know how much it hurt when you said Natalie deserved to go more than I did? After all I had done to create that experience for our family?" "I do now," he said quietly. "I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, or maybe ever. But I want you to know that I see what I have done, and I am committed to changing. Your mother and I have had many long conversations about this since we returned. She has helped me see things I was blind to before. We talked for over 2 hours, covering years of accumulated hurts and misunderstandings. It wasn't a magical resolution, not a Hollywood moment where all was instantly forgiven, but it was a beginning, a foundation upon which we could potentially build a much healthier relationship. As for Michael, the Dubai trip had indeed been a rude awakening. Natalie's true colors had shown themselves vividly under the stress of disappointment. Her constant complaints about the hotel, the long lines, the lack of VIP treatment had revealed a materialism and entitlement that could no longer be ignored. Their constant fighting had culminated in a public argument at the Dubai Mall that had left my mother in tears and my father seething with anger. 2 weeks after their return, Michael ended the engagement. Natalie, predictably, did not take it well. She demanded to keep the ring, threatened to tell everyone Michael was abusive. He wasn't. And finally resorted to calling me, bizarrely, claiming that I owed her compensation for ruining her trip. I listened to her rant for precisely 1 minute before cutting her off. Natalie, this conversation is over. Do not contact me or my family again. I blocked her number and social media accounts immediately afterward. Good riddance. My relationship with my mother improved more quickly than the one with my father. She reached out regularly, not just with superficial check-ins, but with genuine interest in my life and my thoughts. She began standing up to my father on small issues, finding her voice after decades of deferring to him. It was a slow process, but I could see her making a real, tangible effort to change patterns that had been established over 40 years of marriage. Michael and I had the most complicated road to recovery. He had been raised to expect preferential treatment, to believe his needs and wants should come before mine. Breaking that mindset was not easy for either of us. We had several false starts, conversations that devolved into old accusations and defenses. But gradually, as he processed the harsh lessons from his relationship with Natalie and saw the positive changes our parents were making, he began to shift his perspective. 6 months after the Dubai fiasco, he invited me to dinner and offered a genuine apology, not just for the trip, but for years of accepting advantages at my expense. I never thanked you for helping with my rent last year, he admitted, or for any of the other times you've bailed me out. I took it for granted that you would always be there to help without ever considering how I could support you in return. It was a huge step for him. As for me, the entire experience was transformative. I learned to set clear boundaries with my family, to assert my needs, and to expect them to be respected. I stopped automatically saying yes to requests for financial help and started evaluating each situation on its merits. Sometimes I still said yes, but it was a choice now, not a foregone conclusion. I also began to examine my own patterns of people-pleasing and seeking validation through sacrifice. With the help of a therapist, I explored why I'd been so willing to spend enormous sums of money and effort to create perfect experiences for people who often showed little appreciation. I learned to value myself enough to expect reciprocity in my relationships, both within my family and beyond. The Dubai trip that never was became a massive turning point in our family dynamic. It forced issues that had simmered beneath the surface for decades to finally boil over, creating an opportunity for honest conversation and real, lasting change. It was painful, messy, and at times deeply hurtful, but ultimately necessary for all of us to grow. My father still occasionally slips into old patterns of favoring Michael or taking me for granted. My mother sometimes falls back into her peacekeeper role rather than standing firm. Michael still has moments of entitlement that echo our childhood dynamic, and I still find myself tempted to overextend myself to earn their approval. But now we catch ourselves, and we catch each other. We talk about these patterns openly instead of pretending they don't exist. For my parents' 41st anniversary, we took a much more modest trip together, a long weekend at a lakeside cabin a few hours from their home. We cooked meals together, played board games, and had conversations that would have been absolutely impossible a year earlier. It wasn't perfect, but it was authentic in a way the Dubai trip never could have been. If you're watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own family, know that change is possible. But it requires courage, honesty, and often a catalyst that forces everyone to confront uncomfortable truths. Sometimes you have to make difficult choices to protect yourself and establish healthy boundaries. It doesn't mean you don't love your family. It just means you finally love yourself enough to expect better treatment. So, what about you? Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took advantage of your generosity? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. If you found my story helpful or relatable, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for themselves even with family. Thank you for listening to my story. Take care and good luck out there.